address from the Honourable Rajeev Chandrasekhar, India's Minister of State for Skill Development and Entrepreneurship and Minister of State for Electronics and Information Technology.
Namaste from New Delhi. Good morning to all my panelists and attendees of this edition of the Sydney Dialogues. Thank you for inviting me to speak here today. And certainly the topic that we are having a discussion around, the whole idea of disinformation, coercion, control, getting the balance of safety and security right are extremely relevant and contextual in the world that we live in today. And so I'm very pleased to be sharing my thoughts along with the other panelists. I will lay out our thoughts on this from the Indian perspective, from the perspective of a nation that has about 830 million Indians that are connected to the internet today, using the internet in various forms and ways, and a country that is going to have almost 1.3 billion Indians connected to the internet by 2025, making India and indeed the Indian internet one of the largest single connected nations in the world and largest single presence on the global internet. And the internet in India is not just about using Instagram or social media or Facebook. Internet, the expanse of the internet, the access to the internet is expanding relentlessly, and more Indian users of the internet are connected to the internet and use the internet for a range of products and services, ranging from even getting public services in a manner that is unprecedented and draws the government and the citizen closer and closer. And in a lot of ways, India has become the preeminent nation in deploying technology and the internet in terms of transforming governance and delivering better public services to its people. So we have that one basic understanding that the internet and indeed the related digital economy that is surrounding the internet are increasingly important pieces, not just from a point of view of governance and delivery of public services, but also from a point of view of creating livelihoods, investments, jobs, entrepreneurship, and innovation. So it takes on a greater degree of significance for us that the internet therefore remains, and the digital economy around it remains, something that is consistent, predictable, and is safe and trusted. So the policy boundary conditions, as we look at policy making around the internet and around tech in general, is that the internet must remain open. It should be certainly safe and trusted for those millions of Indians that use the internet, and that the platforms that have over the last decade started to dominate the internet in these big islands of commercial dominance and exploitation are accountable to those small Indian users that are across the country, and there is a certain legal accountability that is based, that is inherent and legal in the relationship between the platforms and Indian consumers. So broadly, this is the framework that we look at, and I think all of us here can agree that the internet, when it was envisaged, when it was constructed, when it was built in the 80s, and I was a young graduate engineer in the US, filled with the same utopian views that the internet is really this force for good, and that people all around the world could collaborate and create a better world through that collaboration. And that has held true for several decades. And we have seen, unfortunately, over the last decade or so, that the internet, while it remains a force for good, has certainly also become a place where user harm, criminality, and other kinds of deliberate illegalities or actions that border on the illegalities also are pretty significantly present. So I think it is certainly for democracies like India, as we try and harness technology for the good of our citizens, as we harness technology for growing our economy, growing the digital economy, it is important to also address this issue of how do we make sure that the internet and indeed the tech space remains a force for good. And if there is user harm or illegality or criminality that tries to creep in there, or indeed state actors that use things like misinformation and disinformation to undermine open societies like those democracies that we are all from, how do we deal with that? So it is quite clear that amongst the series of things that we have to deal with on the internet to keep it safe and trusted, misinformation, disinformation certainly rank up there with uh, other types of illegality and criminality because of the very viral nature of disinformation and misinformation. In some experiments that we have done, conducted in live on the live internet, our government and our agencies have determined that the velocity of misinformation and disinformation can be 8 to 10 to even sometimes 20 times faster, and the reach in the same order of significance greater than normal information. So I think there is a reasonable conclusion that we can all make as open societies and democracies, that there has to be an approach that, given the borderless nature of the internet, approach towards dealing with this phenomenon and dealing with this issue and dealing with this challenge that must span boundaries, span capitals of nations, and should be a global cooperative framework. I'll just add a few more thoughts before I leave it to the other panelists to speak on the subject. It is certainly clear that in the coming years and the coming decade, certainly that technology will continue to disrupt, the internet will continue to be redrawn, and many countries, including some to the north of us, want to believe that they will in some sense control the redrawing of the tech space that is currently underway. I would certainly stress here that given that these disruptions are the new normal, and that certainly that we all acknowledge that there is a redrawing of the tech space and the global digital economy that is underway, that there is new technologies like AI and Web 3.0 and all of this that are certainly emerging and are accelerating the redrawing of the tech space, that a partnership and a collaborative framework of like-minded countries should be, in a sense, be the catalyst of this process of redrawing or process of the future of technology being architected, rather than have this being as silos driven by individual countries. So I have consistently argued, and the government of India and all of us here in India consistently argue, that the future of tech and future of the internet is something that we must not allow to get ahead of the so-called challenges that we want to address. And I think there is certainly a case to be made that on issues of disinformation, on issues of misinformation in particular, and on the broader issue of user harm and online criminality, that there has to be a broader cooperation between like-minded nations, in a sense that we are able to jointly address these issues in a more responsible and a more responsive way in the coming months and years. I will leave it at that. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I hope this is an interesting conversation that takes us forward in harnessing technology for the good of all of our people. Thank you.